the things that we consider the major stressors in our life could be solved with a little bit more time or a little bit more money. Am I right? Think about it. How many things that really annoy you, cause problems in your life, stress you out? If you just had a little bit more time or a little bit more money, a lot of those problems would go away, wouldn't it? Well, this morning we're going to look at how we are called to be good stewards of what God has entrusted us with. And I want to let you guys know you are actually amazing at this as a church. And so I don't know if you guys know this, but you are a very giving and generous church. More so than maybe any I've seen. It's an incredible thing that you guys have done in the life of Christ. Letting God work through you, and you've entrusted a lot of what God's given you back to Him. You've invested that in the kingdom by really putting your dollars as God's called you to put your dollars. And I know that's a hard thing, and for a lot of churches, pastors would really get up, and if they're going to preach and talk about giving in any sense, it's a stress. It's a struggle. Because you know it's not going to be received well. Except for I can walk up here and say, I don't have anything to worry about. We can just sit up here and celebrate because you guys are an incredible giving church. You guys really are. Let me just tell you a few crazy things that we can do because of you. First of all, now I did a little study. Maybe I should or shouldn't say this, but I can see giving in our church, right? As a pastor, I can see those things. And a normal church, they would say about 20% of the church are regular givers. Some churches say even about 10% of the church are regular givers. I would say that's somebody who gives more often than every month or two. Regular giver. I checked how many people are regular givers in this church, and there's 124 of you. Let me tell you, some Sundays we don't have 124 of you. Right? That is incredible. That is you guys being faithful, and it's so amazing. And you've got to see as a church what God's allowed you to be a part of, the things that He is doing in this church and through this church, because you guys are a faithful giving church. And it's awesome. I was so blessed to come into a church like this. Not only do we get to have some staff, and we're blessed as staff to be able to full-time dedicate ourselves to ministry because of that, but we give great amounts of money to support missions and ministry, and we have this huge and gorgeous building that, guess what, it's not real cheap to keep up, and we can do that. Because you guys are giving church, and we can love on people, and we can go to Africa, and the things you guys have done and supported in Africa is incredible. From buying people cattle to motorcycles to travel to helping train pastors and serve the needy. We've fed the poor. There's incredible things that have been done through this church. God's allowed us to be a part of His work because you guys have been a faithful church, and I just want to celebrate that for a minute because you guys are incredible. So let's give God a round of a hand and give you a little bit of just praise through the Lord because you guys have been a faithful church. I love that. I'm so thankful for who you guys are and what you've done. It's God who does all these things. But when we are faithful, we get to be a part of the work that He is doing. It's an incredible thing. Man, I can even look forward. You guys know how excited I am about the Angus Cares ministry that I'm hoping is something we'll be launching at the beginning of next year and kind of are already getting stuff rolling in right now. The ability to truly love people, serve people, and be there for them. That's your faithfulness. Your faithfulness does this, and I think it's going to be a game changer in this church, man, and I am so excited about what you guys do. But I still think, though, there are things that we can learn in these areas. And so we're going to dive in to this idea of stewardship, right? Being responsible with what God has given us. Man, especially our time and money, because those are two big things that we are stewards of. And so it's interesting, if I was to ask you guys the general church question, how much of your income are you supposed to give to the church? What's the general answer I'm going to get? 10%. 10%. We call that a tithe, don't we? Random fact, did you know that less than 25% of Christians tithe, and the average giving of a family is 2.5% of income? Did you know it was 3.3% of income in the Great Depression? It's gone down since then. You guys are more faithful. I'm incredibly blessed by that. But 10%, that's the answer you would get. Do you guys know where that comes from? Right? Is that how much money they used to give? Right? We say, oh, yeah, it's in the Bible. I think I remember something reading about it in the Old Testament. What about the New Testament? Is it different? So in the early times of the Bible, we see two primary examples of a tithe, the start of this idea of a tithe, 10%. One's Abraham, who offers 10% of the spoils, right, of these false gods and the spoils that he had gotten. He offered 10% to the church, to the high priest Melchizedek. If you remember that, it's in Genesis 14. It's kind of the first big time we see it. The others, we see Jacob, right? He has this dream of this ladder to heaven. And so after that, he commits to giving a tithe, 10% to God. That's a little bit later in Genesis 28. And so this idea ends up getting formalized, right, under the Mosaic law. And that's Leviticus, right? Leviticus 27, we see this idea formalized of a tithe. And we see that, but I can tell you, back then, that was a baseline of giving. They really considered the tithe to the church kind of like a tax. It was kind of the minimum acceptable back then. It really was. That's what we see in the Old Testament. They would actually then go above and beyond that to what they would call free will offerings, we see. And so they give their 10% to the church to make sure things are taken care of, right? So they got cattle in the back or replaced the wall on the temple. I don't know what they did exactly with those dollars back then. But then other things would come up and they'd want to support those, right? They'd want to support other things that are happening in the ministry of their church. And so they would give these free will offerings. Some people say that back then it was likely that as much as 40% of all income and earnings and crops and things like that of a person was given to some level of offering. As much as 40%. Churches don't really preach that message so much. But that is as much as 40%. Now, you may think about this and you say, now listen, Pastor, that's Old Testament stuff, which we know changed in the new covenant that Jesus brought about, right? Here's the thing though, Jesus teaches that the new covenant is what? It's better, it's greater, and it has a greater sacrifice. You see that all through the New Testament. Because you're right, new covenant, Mosaic law, we're not under Mosaic law anymore. Actually not. The tithe system that was put in place under Mosaic law is Mosaic covenant. Jesus completed the law and brought the new covenant, right? And so you'd say, oh, that's gone. And you'd be right. But if the new covenant is greater and more and richer and greater sacrifice, then how do you think that would apply to giving? That's a question we'd have to ask ourselves. And I think there's a few verses, a few passages that really stand out to me when I think about this, because a lot of people like to, in the new covenant, think, yeah, 10% is a good number, maybe I can get to that. But I don't really have to do that much anymore. I don't think it's about a percentage. And I think the New Testament teaches us about being good stewards of our finances. The first one, if you'll turn there with me, is 2 Corinthians. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7 is a well-known and important passage on New Testament giving and stewardship. It says, each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. There's this idea of willingly and joyfully giving to the Lord. Right? You don't do it because somebody's making you do it. But you do it because you love the Lord. We talked about worship last week, and an overflow and abundance of our love for Christ overflows, and we should do these things. And so it talks about this idea of a cheerful giver. Mark 12. Turn back a few books with me. Mark 12, verse 41 through 44. Here's a powerful one. Mark 12, 41 through 44. The men of Nineveh will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and behold, something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, something greater than Solomon is here. When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. And that is definitely Matthew. And you guys are thinking, what in the world is Pastor saying right now? And I'm reading this going, this ain't right. So just in case you wanted Matthew chapter 12, there it was. Goodness gracious. I kept waiting for this to get to the point where it's supposed to say what I wanted it to say. It kept not saying it. Let's redo. This is a little message in grace. Please give me some. Mark chapter 12. This is going to sound a lot more related to what I'm talking about. Okay. Mark 12, the widow's offering. And he sat down opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums. And a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which makes a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, "Truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put in everything she had, all she had to live on." That's sacrificial giving. So let's try something together. Every one of you, hopefully, received $1 in the last half hour, didn't you? Hopefully. A bunch of you probably did. You got $1. But you didn't expect to hear a sermon on giving and get money. But you got some money this morning. Find that $1. We're going to use that $1. Now let me tell you, as my finance committee is getting worried, this is me and Brittany's money, all right? This is not church money, all right? So don't worry. Brittany and I's money we gave to you this morning. I want you to take that $1 and we're going to take a minute here, find somebody else in this room and give them that $1. Anyone you want. Get out and move around. Maybe it's your neighbor. Maybe it's one of our poor college kids. Find somebody, give away that $1. Let's get to work.
Jim.
I like it. Moving.
You don't want my $1. You do not want my $1.
You can give me. This is my mom that giving me $1.
But you don't want my $1.
I got 2. I like it. Got some exercise in too, that's helpful. Awesome. We did it. We gave away some money. I got some money. It worked out good. Now, that was about $150 we just gave away. Pretty cool, right? Now I want each of you to get out your cash, your checkbooks or whatever, and I want you to get $150 of your dollars and give that to someone. Wait, now, some of y'all are like, hold on, is he serious right now? Is this what's about to happen? No, you don't have to. You can stop. I see some of you faithful people. Thank you. I see that. That's good. And we didn't quite get the response in round 2, did we? That we got in round 1? Yeah, no problem giving away my money. Here's the point. The first didn't really take any sacrifice, did it? You gave out of your abundance. You didn't even expect to really have that $1, so giving it away wasn't a problem. You may have even just thought, hey, listen, this pastor's money, he gave it to me, he told me to give it away, so I gave it away. Right? Once it came down to giving your money away, money you expected to have, money you had some plans for, things got a little bit more uncomfortable. Here's some key truths to remember. How has God called us to give? Joyfully and sacrificially, right? So which of those 2 would have been more of what God asked of you? Second round, right? Second round. Because really, the first one is easy because you kind of felt like it was my money, but who's the owner of all your money, all your things? 1 Corinthians 10:26. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Everything. Psalm 24:1. What does Psalm 24:1 teach us? It says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell within it. Everything and everyone is the Lord's. Exodus 19:5. Now, therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine. Everything is the Lord's. Job 41:11. Who has first given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. And Haggai 2:8. Here's another good one. Haggai 2:8. We have that one. The silver is mine and the gold is mine, declares the Lord of hosts. All your things, all your money, and all things under heaven and in heaven are God's. We are temporary stewards of his things. So if everything you have is actually God's, and he just gave you the skills to earn it, he gave you the job to receive it, and then he asks you to be a good steward of it, don't you think we should do with it what he asks us to do? Shouldn't that be a little bit easier like round one was? When I gave you the dollar, it was my dollar, I told you what to do with it, you did. Easy peasy. Man, what would you think? So let's say that first time everyone got their dollar. What if I asked you guys to give away that dollar that I gave you, and a whole bunch of people were like, nah, I'll put it in my pocket and I'm going to sit right here because I need this dollar and I'm going to do with it what I want to do with it. We would have thought, what in the world? It would have seemed pretty rude, right? I mean, it wasn't really even yours. You were just the carrier of it. I didn't have to give it to you, right? And man, if you did do that, and then later I know that I want to give away more, probably not going to give it to you. Matthew 35, 14 through 30. I know we're bouncing around like crazy. This is the parable of talents. This is a great teaching on this idea. You see, in Matthew 35, there's this idea of this owner, this master who's given talents, which is money back then, to different people. Let's see how they were and what God kind of teaches us about stewardship in this. And I definitely said Matthew 35.
Yes, you did.
It's 25.
There's 28 chapters. It's 25. I got you guys taking your Bibles today. That's a good thing.
Just check.
Thank you. 25 verses 14 through 30. I'm going to read this all because I think it's good and we'll talk about it. It's a little long, but if you'll follow along with me. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he who also had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I've made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed, so I was afraid. And I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant, you know that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I have gathered no seed? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers. At my coming I should have received what was mine with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is an interesting parable. And there's this idea of being faithful with what was entrusted to them. It wasn't theirs to begin with. The master had an expectation. One of them thought, "Now this ain't really yours, and I know you you're trying to get money where it's not really your money, and I didn't know, I was worried about it, so I just hid it in the ground, and here, you can have it back." He said, "Cast it out." He took it away and gave it to the one that's faithful. See, God says, if you're the one who takes the dollar and says, "I'll keep that, I'm going to stick it in my pocket. Next time I come around to give him, I'm giving him some blessings," man, maybe he's going to skip over the unfaithful servant. Now, I'm not saying giving of your time or money is some sort of investment opportunity, right? This isn't this prosperity message where if you give to the church, then you're going to get abundantly more in return. It's not what I'm saying. Now, I do believe that God says he entrusts those who are faithful with much. Amen. And there's things I'd like from God more than money, just to be a part of what he's doing. And I want to show myself to be one faithful with a little, to know that he can trust me with much. Check this out. I think this is how we often live as people. And I think it's kind of what we've learned about here is a different picture. You see these baskets on the front of the stage. See, I think we receive our money, and we have things that we have to do. And so we got taxes to pay. I know this one don't feel too good, does it? Oof. Oh. Oof. Yeah, I don't really know, but sure. Home, we got things, we got a house, we got a car. You got things we got to pay for, an electric bill. And I can use that new car, you know what I'm saying? We got food, we got to eat. Go to Olive Garden. Starbucks is just right around the corner all the time. What do we got here? Entertainment. Man, I worked hard. You know what I'm saying? I worked hard. I got the movies. Some of y'all got a casino problem. I'm just saying. What do we got here? Oh, vacation. Man, after all that hard work, man, the casino didn't do it all for me, so I got some vacation to do. And look at this. We got this extra money now. And we feel like we are so faithful. And we dump some of that extra money in the bucket, don't we? We feel like, oh man, we did good. Because some people, even after spending a lot of money, they started out with such a big bucket, they can pour a lot in the tithes and offering. And they can feel good about it. I gave a bunch. But did we really need to spend? I don't know. Maybe I didn't really need that new car. Man, you know what? I don't think Starbucks is going out of business without me. You see, it's interesting how we spend the money, and we get this picture that if we put a lot in this last bucket, or even if we put any at the end of, we've spent all what we want, we get a little extra, and we feel good about it. But man, that parable, that teaching that Jesus taught about even, what about this person? Who just puts a little in, can't really do that, definitely can't do that, and then I'm going to give as much as I can here. And this person probably does this first. And man, they didn't put near as much in the offering bucket, but it was the priority. See, they skipped over. There's some things that I could do, but God's called me to do this. And so I'm going to put this in, and I'm going to trust the rest of my life with Him. See, Jesus has said that first person might have given more money, but the second person gave more. You see, somebody with a bunch of money can look good because they can give it more, but as Pastor Paul would put it, it's a good line. It isn't about how much you give, but how much you have left. It's a message Jesus teaches. I mean, there are some of you out there, a lot of you, that probably live like that second person. You give faithfully to the Lord. I'm so thankful for that. You guys are incredible. I love that. And it may not even be a lot. But to the Lord, He recognizes His faithful servant. But maybe there's some of you out there that are more like the first person. Maybe you don't really give at all. Maybe you just kind of give sometimes out of your abundance. Maybe you give 10, 15% of your income. But there's no sacrifice. It's easy. You've got enough money. You can look good and say, I gave my tithe. But it's not a joyful, sacrificial gift. You know, last week we looked at the idea that worshiping God there's joy in it, right? But there's sacrifice in it too. Now, let me tell you, you need to keep account of your time and money. Because it's easy to get lost in what you're doing. We call these things, there's real complicated terminology and ways to do that, like a calendar. Is how I can keep a track of my time. I'm actually not great at that, to be honest with you guys. My wife is helping me. There's a budget. Ooh, budget. I love budgeting. I'm a finance guy. Let me tell you, if you don't tell your money what to do, Dave Ramsey would tell you, your money's telling you what to do. Now, you guys truly are pretty awesome at this. You are. And it's incredible. It's easy to come here and talk about it because I know a lot of you are amen, because you know that this has been a big part of your life and God's really trusted you with things and you've been faithful, and I love that. You know, I was telling some people this. I think you guys might be able to be like the poster church for a picture of what good church faithfulness and giving looks like. I honestly think you guys are incredible. I've never seen a church that has so many faithful givers in it as we do here. And it's not that every one of you gives. I'm sure there are people here that don't. You haven't trusted that part of your life to the Lord yet. Maybe there's some of you that give, but not quite how God really desires it of you. It's not quite joyful and sacrificial. It's not quite there, but you do. You're faithful. You're more and more trusting that to God. But I think comparatively, you guys are incredible. And we really are blessed as a church to get to do so much of God's will because of you guys, because of your faithfulness in giving of your finances. And there may be some of you that take this and say, oh man, if I'm going to be a part of this church, I want to be a faithful member of this church and see what God's called me to do and do it. But here's the big lesson I think we can learn, is that this truth about our finances and where we spend it and how faithful we are with it and the fact that it's limited and we got to be a good steward of it applies exactly to your time. Exactly the same. Right? Because we got things we have to do, and I got to take care of my house, and I got to clean up, and I bought this new thing, and I'm going to put it together for my house, and new furniture, and I got to spend my time. I spend a lot of time going out to eat. I don't really like to cook, so I want to go out and eat, and man, I love spending my time at the movies or watching Netflix. I love going to baseball games, whatever it is your hobby is, and go on vacation. Some of y'all more than others. And then, oh man, if I can find time in my schedule after my grandson's soccer games are over, and after, man, I know I keep missing on Sunday because of baseball, but it's important to my kids, and okay, I got a little bit left over. Maybe I can go to church this Sunday. Maybe I'll even go to Sunday school. Man, and if I really get my time freed up, because I got a lot going on, I'm a busy person, maybe I'll take a discipleship class. Maybe I'll invest one-on-one in discipleship with someone else. Maybe I'll witness to my neighbor. But I'm busy. I got a lot going on. You just don't understand, Pastor. There's so much. And so after I've done all these things, I'm willing to give even everything left over back to God. I'm willing to do it. But I'm busy. How much of your time are we giving to God? This incredible truth that we see in Scripture is talking about stewardship. Helps us to see that all of your time and all of your treasures are God's. He wants all of them from you. Now, what he asks you to do with your time and with your treasures, see, that's what's important. It isn't just how much money you give to the church, right? It's also what do you do with that you keep? Because some of you are being really faithful in these other areas, and just to get by, you really can't give much of anything. And God sees faithfulness. He's not worried about the amount, as if God needs our money to do what he wants to do or something. He's saying, what are you even doing with the amount that you keep? Right? I mean, God wants to bless us and us to enjoy things and have fun, and he loves us to have rest and spend time with people and enjoy the creation he's given us. I think those are great things. There are times when going on vacation is exactly what God would want you to do with your time and money. There are times that going out to the baseball field with your kids is a great investment of your time and money. Right? You got to go to work. God's given you a job, so that's a very important thing to do. You got to get to work because you may be providing the roof over your head. You may be needed to provide the food to put on the table, right? So those are good uses of your time and money. But the idea is, if it's all God's, he's asked us to be faithful in each different area. And so it's not just that which we give to the church. I think that stuff is important because God's called us to do it. But what are we doing with the rest of it too? You see, how many of us feel like if we, maybe not us, just Christians in general, like if I came to church on Sunday morning, most weeks out of the year, then I've done good in this area. And how many see that God's asked us for so much more. He's called us to be together more than just in a general large worship setting like this, but small groups, one-on-one in fellowship, discipleship processes, right? Iron sharpening iron, serving together, loving together. Do you know that every single one of you is gifted in some area of service that's meant for serving? Do you know that the Bible teaches that? Do you know that there's actually a lot of ways that you can use those gifts in your church? Because I believe that God gives each one of you unique gifts that are meant to be used for serving the church. That's what the Bible says. You can get mad at Jesus about that if you like. But it's meant to, each one of us are meant to serve in the church. And that unique gift is what's needed to do the work that God's called this church to do. We have everyone we need to do exactly what God's called us to do right now. Did you know there's areas you could plug in? We've got all kinds of ministry opportunities in this church. Obviously, there's the ones, children's ministry and youth, and you could serve on a committee maybe. Some of you may get nominated to be a deacon. There's an opportunity for things like that. You could help in our lawn care ministry. You could help and serve in CR. You could teach a Sunday school class. You could come help JP and the Cabobos get our church beautified. There's so many areas your gift could serve. There's so many. Worship team. Jenny, I don't think she's going to be mad if she gets a few more guitar players or drummers or piano players. Come on. Everything we need is you. God's given you to be the church. You can serve in sound or video. You wave back there, guys. Hey, guys, thank you. There's so many areas. And if there's not an area that fits your gift, we'll find an area. We'll find a way for you to serve in your gift. That's part of my job. That's part of what it means to be a pastor, is to get my church, my flock, and it's not mine, it's God's, but he's called me to be a shepherd of a flock, to serve in the areas they're gifted and to help you find what those areas are. are and create opportunities for you to use those gifts. And I'm telling you, there's ways. There's so many ways. In fact, let me tell you this. There are a few areas right now that we can really use people. Right now, real needs in your church that you could fill. First of all, children's workers. The kindergarten through like 5th grade, Bobby has said, he's short volunteers. Kindergarten through 5th grade, teaching. He's up there, he runs things over there in 2-story, he's doing a great job. But he needs workers right now. You can do that. And we're trying to lighten the load for everybody, so you'd serve for a few weeks, then you get a bunch of weeks off. That's what we're hoping for. You know we need that? Did you know Jared's looking for a male youth leader? He needs a grown-up male to help him in youth right now. Because he had this guy, Bobby, and then I stole him from him and made him our children's and family pastor. So if you're a man who's thinking, man, that might be an area I've served before in my life, or it's an area I'm interested in, Jared is looking for you. He could use you right now. I know that we're still MOPS on Wednesday mornings. If you're available on Wednesday mornings, we still need volunteers. Our MOPS program is growing and growing on Wednesday mornings, and so we had like a dozen little bitty kids last Wednesday. And so me and Jared and Bobby and everybody were in there trying to take care of all these little ones. Come, if you're available, I know not a lot of you aren't available on Wednesday mornings, but if you are, there's an area that you could come serve. Just love on kids, play with them, they're good kids. It's a blast, really. I know we're looking for more people to get trained in our sound. Something we need right now, instrumentalists. We really could use instrumentalists. Now, there's expectations to be a leader, I will tell you, I'm sorry. There are things, but gosh, we have your church. God has said that the gifts that you have are meant for your church, and that everything we'll need, we have. And we have needs, even as a church right now. And that's opportunities for you. That means there's some of you right now that are meant to be plugged into those key areas and to serve in those areas, and you haven't yet taken that step of faithfulness. And maybe because you're like, oh, mate, I don't know that I can do that. Not me, I'm not good enough. I'm not a mature enough believer. I'm not really a leader. Maybe it's that I'm just so busy with all these things. I don't have time for that one. I don't know what it is, but if I can tell you how incredible the joy it is to serve the Lord in the way He's gifted you. This isn't some like terrible thing you have to do, because it shouldn't be something someone makes you do, but something you do joyfully. Out of the overflowing your heart, it's incredible. Let me tell you, I loved it. I loved serving in the church so much that I ended up making it a full-time job. I love it, guys. It really is incredible. I think that you do find true joy when you serve in the way God's gifted you. And so guess what? If you sign up for children's ministry and you go in there and you come out and you're like, nope, this ain't for me. That's totally fine. Try something else. I just want you to get plugged in, because I know where you're called to be is what we need. And so I don't have to worry about forcing the square into a round hole, because God's got all that planned out. So the question is, are you being a good steward of your time and your gifts? And I can tell you this, to me, I believe there's a few things that we should all be doing in our church, here at Angus, any church. I think there's some things that it might be a different area you serve, it might be a different area you plug in, but I think all believers, honestly, should be doing. You should be in a small group. Most of ours, almost all of them, are on Sunday mornings. We've got one for you. Our small groups have been growing and growing. We just had to open a new room and a new small group this morning. You should be in a small group. 9 o'clock Sunday morning. Come. You should be in a worship service. It's 10:30. You guys are here. Thank you for coming. It would have been awkward to preach this to empty pews. You should be serving in some area using your gifts. Whatever it is, each one of you. If you're a believer, you should find an area to serve. And honestly, you should even consider taking some sort of discipleship class every now and then. We offer them in the spring and the fall. I think every believer should do those things. Because I think those are basic things, and it may feel like, oh man, that's a lot of time. Yeah. I think it is. And I think God He honors that there might be certain things in different seasons of your life that He calls you to, and maybe that has you take time away from one thing at a different time. But man, those are just some core things. Small group, that's discipleship, that's fellowship, it's in the Bible. The worship service, it's all over the Bible. Serving in the church with your gifts is very specifically mentioned in the Bible. These are just core things, and they can feel like a lot because we don't have our priorities right all the time. Because we're trying to give out of our abundance, and when our abundance flows into other things, then that hurts. That's called sacrifice. That's how God's called us to give. And I think it's an honor to serve God, though. And I think sometimes it is being with our families. Sometimes that's being at work. Sometimes that's giving to God what is God's and trusting his time, your time and finances with him. In John 9:4 says that we should work now because the time is coming when no one will be able to work. There's a time coming in your life when you won't be able to anymore. And then Romans 14:12 says that each one of us will have to give an account before God of that very work that we've done in our life. And then we can see even in 1 Corinthians 3, we talked about this Bema seat. And so God says that while you can work, because there's going to be a time you can't anymore, and then you're going to come before me to receive your reward. And your works on earth will be tested as through fire. And will it be gold and precious stones that are refined by the fire and remain? And God can bless you. Or will your works on earth be so much of this stuff that it's like wood, hay, and straw, and it gets burnt up, and you get into heaven but smelling like smoke? Because all your life's work got burned up before you. Because you didn't trust God with what he asked you to be a steward of. Like I said, God's not going to make you rich and famous because you're faithful. But he's going to give you a joy and peace that only comes from him. It only comes from serving him and loving him. And how incredible it is to be a part of that. I love it. I'm telling you, I love what I do. I absolutely love it. I'm so thankful to you as a church to let me do this. And I think you guys will see that as you serve God and trust him. Amen. Now, I'm going to give you some practical ideas. It's getting late. I'm going to give you guys some practical ideas, then we're going to go, okay? First, practical idea. Take a look at how you spend your time and just consider if it honors God. Right? Like I said, there's lots of things you do with your time, and those things you should do with your time, many of them. But just reflect on how you spend your time and see if all those things truly honor God. Look to get involved here. This is where God's got you, hopefully. If you're a visitor, this is where God may have you. We'd love to have you. Look to get involved here. Like I keep saying, we put those visitor cards in the pews in front of you, in the chair back, and there's an area on it you can mark to, yes, thank you, Kaylee. There's an area you can mark that, like, here's an area I'm interested in learning about. I'll call you. Jared will call you. One of us will call you. Bobby, we'd love to get you plugged in or find out who God is and has made you. Look to get involved. Reflect on your giving. See if you're giving joyfully and sacrificially. Because I think it's a blessing to get entrusted with God's resources. It's pretty incredible that he does that. He gives to us. Man, I love to get to be a part of funding what God's doing. And I have seen, my wife and I in our lives, both separately before we were together, and even now being married and together, we've seen God take care of our finances because we just basically trust him with them. Not that we're doing anything magical or we're some great example, but we've basically done it. My wife has a cool story about the first paycheck she ever received. It's $200. She took a $20 bill, and I hope this is okay that I share this. Is this okay? Sure. I didn't even ask her. It's a good thing. But she took 10% of that, and she gave it an offering, and she came back to work that next week, if I'm telling this correctly, and in a job where this has never happened. She's talked to other employees. It's just not a thing. The boss called her into her office. The new employee just said, hey, I just know, I don't do this ever, but I'm just so glad to have you. You've been doing a good job, so here's a little bonus, $20. It's just, God is so faithful. I've got crazy stories I can tell you about how God is faithful if you actually entrust him with what he's given you. And here's the thing. If you're having trouble committing to giving, do it every Sunday. I actually think there's something powerful about giving every Sunday. I actually don't personally. We give once a month, my wife and I. But that's an important thing. We really do the budget together, and it's really something we know and see and feel. Sometimes we give away $150 to the church in the middle of a service. But giving is worship. Wayne Watts, he wrote a book called The Gift of Giving. It's a really good book on giving. And he gave each week. He committed to giving every Sunday even if it's a little. He gave as he believed God was leading him, because in Deuteronomy 16:16 it says, "Do not come to me empty-handed." And so he heard the Lord in that and said, "I will never come to your worship service empty-handed. I will always come with an offering to you." And so if that's something you're struggling with, commit just to each Sunday. Give what God calls you to give. I'm not worried about the finances of this church, and so it's really easy for me to just tell you guys, because he's got it. I want you to see what faithfulness brings to your life. And I know many of you do, because you guys are so good at this. You guys really are. I mean, you're an incredible church, and I'm blessed to be your pastor. I'm blessed to know that these areas that are so touchy in church can be easy to say to you guys, because I know you guys are doing a good job in many of these areas. And so it's a great opportunity as a church to say that this is one of the ways God shines through us. But I want that for all of you. And I know that each one of us have room to grow in one of these areas. We all do. So I think it's just a great thing to see. Like I said last week about worship, consider how much glory God receives. Right? It's glory that he deserves anyway. But it's given to him when we faithfully trust him with all that he's given us stewardship over. Our time, our things. You know, last week I preached on worship, right? And one of the things was worship through praise songs. And so I preached on that, and I said, let's practice together. And then we all sang after that. And it was like powerful. I don't know about you guys. That was moving. What if I did that now? I'm like, okay, now let's all take out our checkbooks and let's practice this together. It sounds a little weird, but wouldn't it feel kind of the same? There it is. I love it. But wouldn't that be the same? So we're not worried about it. It's always we worship God. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about this church because God's got it. I see him moving in this church all the time. I'm worried about you being faithful with what God's given you and asked of you. It's incredible to be a part of what God's doing. But we're going to have a time of response. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to take this time and actually reflect on what response God's asking you of you. I'm not saying like how much money you're going to give, although that might be a thing that God's calling you to. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying reflect on how you are being a steward of what God's given you. Time, money, family, whatever it may be. And respond to him. Say, God, I commit to you. That may be, you may need prayer. And Jared and I, or your pastors, will be up here. We'd love to pray with you. If you want, you can pray right there in your pews. You can come up here to our, what do we call these prayer benches? Little half pews. I don't know if that's bad to say that. You may need to fill out a card. You may say, okay, yeah, that's right. I haven't felt like enough, and so I didn't serve. Or I haven't felt like I'm willing to give my time. And so maybe I need to fill out one of these connect cards, whatever we call them. And just to find out more information about someone. Find out if that's where I can be. You can drop that. And there's baskets. Thank you, Miss Beth. There's baskets at the doors. Just drop it in the basket on the way out. Drop it in the offering plate. It's fine. But just consider in this time what God's calling you to do. Our worship team's going to come up, and they're going to play. Maybe you can just sing praises to him. But let's consider how we can respond to God in worship this morning. Will you pray with me?